Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Laura Neville and I'm a licensed naturopathic physician. I believe that everyone has the opportunity to heal without exception. I love working with women in perimenopause and menopause because I believe the second half of life should be the very best half, and I intend to help make that happen with everyone I work with. A lot of listeners out there are super busy moms who are far too focused on their families to know what the heck is going on with their hormones. So today I wanted to talk about symptoms of hormone imbalance, the obvious, the not so obvious, and then give you hints at treatments for all of that in a natural manner. So when I say the word hormone, I'm talking about sex hormones, so estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Testosterone's important for women, not just for men. I'm also talking about a hormone called cortisol. So if you've ever heard the term adrenal fatigue, that's the hormone that's associated with that dysfunction. So it's about having low cortisol levels. And, to be honest, most adults walking around have at least some degree of adrenal fatigue or suboptimal or low cortisol levels. A lot of children and teens are also today suffering from this. And basically it comes back to chronic stress. So many factors that lead to stress. I'm going to circle back around to that at the very end. But let's start out with common symptoms of sex hormone imbalance. So most commonly, we see irregular menstrual cycles, heavy menstrual cycles, sometimes night sweats, bloating each and every month. Brain fog is very common. If you've experienced brain fog before, you know exactly what that term means because that's exactly what it feels like. If you've never had it, you are very lucky and don't worry about it. But there are also mood swings that are very common with hormone imbalance. Less commonly thought about symptoms would be dryness of the skin, weight gain, breast tenderness, even fibrocystic breast changes. Uterine fibroids are associated with sex hormone imbalances. But also forgetfulness. So forgetting, words that are like just on the tip of your tongue, forgetting where your keys are, forgetting your own name, forgetting, which way is up. Those are all signs of sex hormone imbalance, actually. And then we have cortisol. So you can think of cortisol as the stress cushion. So you want some cortisol, but you don't want too much and you don't want too little. When you have too little cortisol, you can go from 0 to 100, just like that, over seemingly very insignificant stressors in life. And that can be really challenging both for yourself and for the people around you, right? So when you have adrenal dysfunction or low cortisol levels, any of the sex hormone imbalance that you're already dealing with on the forefront really just becomes magnified and makes all of that stuff just that much worse. So with low cortisol levels, symptoms that you might experience would be difficulty sleeping, anxiety, decreased stamina and energy levels, maybe body aches and pains or headaches, and allergies. Allergies are very common with low cortisol levels and adrenal fatigue. So a lot of us are taught that allergies are just a symptom of, having too little Zyrtec or Allegra in our systems. And I think it's easy to not question why we have allergies because they are so common. Everyone around us, especially if you live in the Pacific Northwest, experiences allergies. And so this just becomes something that's so common, we don't question it. But I always like to remind people, common does not necessarily mean normal. And this is likely a deeper issue of adrenal fatigue. So this becomes most apparent when high levels of stress actually make allergies to things like pollen, dander, trees, much, much worse during periods of a lot of stress. So there's many treatment options to lessen or even resolve the symptoms of adrenal fatigue or other hormone imbalances. Eating a whole foods diet, plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables is absolutely key. That is foundation. If you are working with any doctor that doesn't ask you about your diet and what you're eating, you need to question that, right? plenty of water, getting healthy sleep patterns, healthy sleep cycles, priority in your life is very important as much as you can. Healthy mind management is also, I think, absolutely key and foundational, and it's something we don't often talk about. Hands down, those things have to be in place. You cannot take a boatload of medications or a boatload of supplements if you're not addressing those foundations and expect to get better, right? You can't out-supplement any of those poor foundational aspects. But there are cherries on top, as I like to call them. There are things like B vitamins, especially B5 and B6, and also vitamin C that are absolutely wonderful for healthy cortisol levels and a healthy cortisol rhythm. But again, those don't take the place of the other foundational aspects that we talked about. There's an entire class of botanicals called the adaptogens, and they are named this way because they help the body to adapt to stress over the long term. So if you've ever heard of ashwagandha, rhodiola is another one, holy basil is another one, and licorice root. These are all adaptogens. There's many, many more, but those are the most common ones that we typically hear about. Botanicals that treat sex hormones. So chaste tree berry is one. There are other ones. Black cohosh is another very common one that you might have heard about. And I am a huge fan of maca root. So there are many, many different types of maca root. I think 20 to 30 different types at least, the last time I recall looking. There is only one that I know of that's been studied to be impactful in the hormone system in the research. So be very careful. Don't assume that, one maca is the same as the other. I often find with natural medicine, a lot of people are trying supplements without truly understanding exactly, the different species and what it's actually targeted for, or they're using the wrong doses. And so then they assume, these natural therapies don't work or botanicals don't work, right? You do have to work with someone that really understands how to help find the botanicals for you that are best and use them in the appropriate manner and the appropriate doses. Chaste tree berry, black cohosh, and maca really are targeted to treat the sex hormone system, so they can work quite well. Maca in particular, there are several different types of maca species, and so there's only one that I know of that's actually been researched to improve the hormone system, so be careful. Not all maca may do that. I find a lot of times in natural medicine, we run up against the issue of people kind of trying to do this on their own, right? And they're choosing therapies that there's just quite a bit of nuance behind, and not understanding exactly the targeted species to use or the dose or even the right botanical to pick leads them to believe that the therapies don't work, right? When really it was just kind of the non-optimal therapy for them. So it is awesome if you can find someone that understands all of that nuance that can help pick really specific therapies that are very targeted for you and appropriate dosing, and botanical medicine can be quite wonderful. The hormone system also responds really well to essential fatty acids. So omega-3s, this would be fish oil contains quite a bit of omega-3, nuts and seeds as well. Evening primrose oil and borage oil all contain quite a bit of essential fatty acids and omega-3s. These are anti-inflammatory towards the system, and so that means when we're talking about sex hormone imbalance, we're talking sometimes quite a bit of inflammation is present in order for that imbalance to occur in the first place. So if we can reduce the inflammation, we can make huge headway in sex hormone imbalance, reduce symptoms, and reduce pain as well. Another aspect to think about, ginger root. Ginger is a botanical that's really anti-inflammatory, just like those essential fatty acids, and can reduce pain and reduce imbalance in that realm as well. So the moral of the story here, there's a ton of therapies that are available to you. The downside to that is it can become very overwhelming. Which one do you pick? When do you use it? And at what dose do you use? There are so many treatments, I think, again, that maybe has been given to us because each of, our own bodies are so unique and physiology differs between each one of us. So therefore, we have actually some great therapies to choose from. However, you do want to find someone that can help guide you, and so you don't feel like, just completely overwhelmed. This is where medicine, I think, becomes both an art and a science, and not just a science. And there's no one size fits all, right? And I think that's a very good thing. If you are still menstruating, you're still having cycles, botanicals will work quite well in a lot of cases. Once you stop cycling or your cycles are very irregular or rare, botanicals alone have a hard time keeping up with all of those symptoms because the hormone levels themselves are just low to begin with, right? And so this is where I find bioidentical hormone replacement comes in really nicely and to the rescue a lot of times. Lots of women are nervous about hormones, and for good reason. They've heard of, some of the negative side effects that are discussed. I like to, probably take a whole day to talk about that. However, when used in a bioidentical manner, in the correct form, in the correct method of delivery to the body, in the appropriate dose, and following it with testing to ensure optimal levels, a lot of times bioidentical hormone replacement can be very safe and even protective to future health issues. Okay. I'm going to circle back around to stress that we talked about earlier with adrenal fatigue and that kind of chronic stress that leads to that. Stress from a medical standpoint is anything from a fever to a term paper due date, to cold weather, to a large email inbox, to managing family dynamics. Stress is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can easily become too much over time, and with a negative interpretation of that stress, when what we make that stress mean determines if we thrive, if we grow, or if we get completely depleted and anxious and end up a hot mess. So we all know one person that faces, say, a work project perhaps with ease, not a lot of stress. Another person manages or has that very same project and feels absolutely debilitated with stress. The circumstances are the same in both cases, but it's the interpretation of that stressor that truly matters to the body physiology. So I think stress management then becomes this term that we're all so frustrated about. We all know that we need to manage our stress better. We all know that stress can oftentimes exacerbate whatever health issue is going on. In the medical world, we think that 90% of chronic health issues are due to stress. So we talk about stress management, but I think what's usually talked about is a little short-sighted. It becomes frustrating for everyone because we're walking around knowing we need to manage the stress, but we don't quite know how to do it. We're caught between a rock and a hard place. We've never, really had it broken down for us. Maybe we can get to a yoga class occasionally, or we can do a few minutes of meditation or prayer, but beyond that, a lot of us feel like we're just bouncing around at whim without any real sense of control, and that's very stressful. So this comes down to the nitty-gritty of understanding our thoughts and our reactions, the reactional patterns we have to stress. So that secret and silent conversation that we're having with ourselves during every waking moment is what matters, right? We're learning to use our brains in a more effective manner to reduce the stress on top of the stressor that throws our entire cortisol system and sex hormones in a big, huge loop. So it takes practice and dedication, but the idea is that you are rewiring your brain to interpret the world around you in a much more healthy manner. The first step, usually people want to know, how do I do that? How do I do that? The very first step is simply to just acknowledge and understand and recognize what those thoughts are. And that's actually a little bit harder than you might first imagine. Those thoughts are so fleeting and so fast, you have to be very still and mindful in order to catch them. Sometimes you can't catch them. When I first started doing this, I realized I could catch my emotions a little bit easier than I could catch my thoughts. So I would sit there and know, oh, I think I feel really stressed out right now for some reason, or anxious. Why am I feeling that way? So I would sit there and kind of rewind the day, think about the thoughts that I was thinking that led me to feeling a certain way. And for some reason, that was much easier for me to understand what my thoughts were. Now, how do you change those thoughts? Don't worry so much about that right now. The first step is just to recognize what those thoughts are, because I will tell you, when you recognize it and there's some crazy thoughts that go on, you will naturally want to change that, and it's going to unfold fairly easily for you when you start to question those thoughts. But the first idea is just to recognize and actually hear them, hear what's going on. And I promise you, you're gonna laugh and you're gonna go, oh my gosh, right? And you're gonna want to change that. So I hope that's been helpful. We've covered a lot of ground. Thank you so much for watching this video today, taking time out of your busy schedule to honor yourself. If you're interested in learning more, you are more than welcome to head on over to my website. It's drneville.com, and that's doctor spelled out, my last name, Neville. You'll find on the homepage 2 freebies for you. One is a downloadable PDF of a symptom checklist. So all the stuff we talked about today will give you a symptom checklist, and you can print that out and see how you're doing hormone-wise. And then there's another PDF to download, 5 free recipes delivered directly to your inbox, and those are going to be helpful to balance your hormones and boost your energy level. Thank you so much again. Bye-bye.